now call the March 20th, 2017 Blue Springs City Council meeting to order. If you would stand with me, observe a moment of silence, and then I will lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. I want to welcome you in attendance as well as those that might be watching on cable TV to tonight's City Council meeting. Before we go to the consent agenda, the shelf in front of me is probably the last public recognition of one of our former council members, Grant Byerman, that passed away, and his wife had presented to us to display a nice floral arrangement. Did not stand the test of time, so we could not put that out here to kind of pay tribute to Grant, but we have his picture and his nameplate. Certainly is a tremendous loss. He fought melanoma for 6 years and had finally succumbed to it. So anyway, wanted to make sure you knew what that was. Next, we'll go to the consent agenda. Are there any items to be pulled? If not, I'll accept the motion for approval.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Quavell.
Aye.
Councilman Levisay.
Aye.
Councilman Fowler.
Aye.
Councilman Carter.
Aye.
Councilman Edmondson.
Aye.
Councilman Culpepper. Aye. Mayor Ross.
Aye.
Carried unanimously.
Tonight is the night for public hearings. First, we have a public hearing on the Industrial Development Project for Kohl's Distribution Center.
Mayor, the city has the following exhibit to enter into the record. City Council information form with the following attachments. Public hearing notice to taxing jurisdictions dated February 14, 2017. Bill number 4476 with plan for industrial development project for Kohl's Distribution Center is attached as Exhibit A, and form trusted indenture, bond purchase agreement, lease agreement, and performance agreement. This is all we have to offer for the record.
Thank you. Mr. Wright, on behalf of the city.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of council. Appreciate the opportunity tonight. I just want to touch on a couple things for you, and then we'll have our bond counsel go through the related documents aspect of this, and also have a representative from Kohl's here tonight to talk a little bit about what they're trying to do with these efficiency upgrades. Tonight, staff's presenting a plan for industrial development and related bond documents to you to facilitate a reinvestment at Kohl's roughly 425,000 square foot distribution facility on the north side of 70. The project's going to encompass a capital investment of $7.5 million in mechanical equipment and controls or otherwise personal property. That's the amount of the bond issuance that we're talking about here this evening. The bonds will be a limited obligation of the city, payable solely out of the revenues generated from that lease between us and Kohl's, the user of the equipment. There will be additional investments, design and engineering, some installation and things to go along with the scope of what Kohl's is doing that, again, Mr. Gosling will share with you here in a minute. But the scope of the proposed incentive is focused solely on the equipment side of things. There won't be any adjustments made to the ad valorem taxes on the existing structure, the facility itself, or in the future based on what we're doing here tonight. I mentioned the size of the facility. I think just in terms of presenting it to you tonight, as a targeted use of the Chapter 100 bonds to provide that savings to the company and encourage that reinvestment here in Blue Springs, staff recommends approval. We have met with the primary taxing jurisdictions as well as shared information with them ahead of the public hearing, as well as the notices that they automatically receive. But I'd stand for any questions, and if not, I'll introduce David Martin with Gilmore & Bell.
Are there any questions of Mark? I called him. I was trying to make him Matt Wright, but it's Mark Stumbaugh. So are there any questions?
I've been called worse, right?
Your Honor.
Yes.
May I ask?
Councilman Carter.
How many employees are affected by the Kohl's site?
There's roughly 220 employees out there today that are Kohl's associates. They do fluctuate with their seasons, probably up to 265, and certainly Warren can correct me if I'm off a few there. The investment in the equipment is going to provide efficiencies for them. It's not projected to materially increase or decrease that employment.
But that investment may well keep those employees in Blue Springs.
Absolutely. Yeah, part of the evaluation that then we were certainly glad to have the opportunity to understand that thought process from Kohl's. Part of their evaluation is, do they need to add to their existing distribution footprint to service their customers, or can they reinvest in the across the 9 distribution centers they have today? And I think they've realized with the workforce they have here and what we're trying to partner with them on, they can do that effectively.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll bring the next person up.
My name is Dave Martin with Gilmore & Bell. I've been working as bond counsel on this transaction, and I will give you an overview of the ordinance and the plan and the legal documents that are involved with the issuance of Chapter 100 bonds for the purpose of effecting the tax abatement that Mark just mentioned. So first off, the purpose of the ordinance in this case is to, after holding a public hearing, to obtain any comments that taxing jurisdictions, where they just show up and want to speak on the matter, to take those comments into consideration prior to consideration of the plan. The plan itself describes a 50% tax abatement on the equipment to be acquired in a maximum amount of $7.5 million. The equipment is intended to be acquired in 2017. It would normally go on the tax rolls starting in 2018. So the plan shows a 12-year abatement period starting with tax year 2018 at 50% and terminating in tax year 2029. The overall economic effect is based on the models that we've put together. The tax in absence of abatement would have been just over $600,000. So we're looking at about a $300,000 benefit by virtue of providing tax abatement through Chapter 100. The ordinance also authorizes a series of bond documents. The way that Chapter 100 tax abatement is achieved is through the issuance of a bond. In this case, the bond will be purchased by Kohl's, the same company that is the beneficiary of the tax abatement. They will also lease the equipment under the lease purchase agreement. So under the trust indenture that's authorized under the ordinance, a bond is authorized in the maximum amount of $7.5 million plus $50,000 for cost of issuance. The proceeds will be used, they will be forwarded by the company as bond purchaser, and they will be used to purchase the equipment that Kohl's is going to use in its replacement equipment in its current plant. Kohl's will then lease that equipment from the city. It will be held in the city's name, which is the vehicle to achieve tax abatement. They will lease it under the lease purchase agreement with a promise to repay the amount of the debt service on the bonds that are being issued under the indenture. So at that point, that structure provides 100% tax exemption for that equipment. In order to achieve the 50% abatement that's agreed upon, there's a performance agreement under which Kohl's promises to pay the amounts per year which equal our calculation of what would be the taxes otherwise due. So they're going to pay 50% of that tax as a payment in lieu of tax under the performance agreement. They've also agreed under the performance agreement to a clawback in which if they invest less than they have stated the investment will be, after about an 80%, basically if they don't make 80% of what they stated, they will start to lose a portion that's proportionate to the shortage in terms of tax abatements. Their tax abatement will be reduced proportionately. The last document is a bond purchase agreement, which basically is an agreement by Kohl's to provide the draws on the bond as the purchaser of the bond, and of the city to sell the bond in increments that are equal to those proportionate draws. So that's a basic overview of the plan and the documents. If anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Are there any questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you. Staff, that's all the presentation we have from staff. We'll go to the public. Is there anyone in the audience like to speak in support of? In support of? Opposition to? Opposition to? Close this public hearing. Anyone like to introduce it?
I'll introduce Your Honor.
Okay, it was a tie.
All right.
Okay.
All right, first reading of Bill number 4476, an ordinance approving a plan for an industrial development project for Kohl's Distribution Center, consisting of the acquisition of equipment for Kohl's Department Stores, Inc., a Delaware corporation, authorizing the city of Blue Springs, Missouri to issue its taxable industrial development revenue bonds, Kohl's Distribution Center project, in a principal amount not to exceed $7,550,000 to finance such costs of such project, and authorizing the approving certain documents and actions in connection with the issuances of bonds.
Move the bill be approved on its first reading and proceed with the second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, Your Honor.
Councilman Fowler.
Yeah, Your Honor, I just wanted to acknowledge Kohl's in that in the most recent comprehensive annual financial report, it's public documents out on our website, Kohl's was listed, I think, as number 4 as far as the top taxpayers in Blue Springs, and it's good to see that see them in here expanding their business, wanting to continue to grow it. They've been a good neighbor here in Blue Springs. There is a little bit of truck traffic, but to see them that high on this list, that's quite a change for Blue Springs, and it's good to see them continuing to grow that, and they're growing bigger. So,
Thank you. Anyone else? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Second reading of Bill number 4476, an ordinance approving a plan for an industrial development project for Kohl's Distribution Center, consisting of the acquisition of equipment for Kohl's Department Stores, Inc., a Delaware corporation, authorizing the city of Blue Springs, Missouri to issue its taxable industrial development revenue bonds, Kohl's Distribution Center project, in a principal amount not to exceed $7,550,000 to finance the cost of such project, and authorizing and approving certain documents and actions in connection with the issuance of the bonds.
Move the bill be approved on its second reading and assign the appropriate ordinance number.
Second.
second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Councilman Levesey?
Aye.
Councilman Fowler?
Aye.
Councilman Carter?
Aye.
Councilman Edmondson?
Aye.
Councilman Culpepper?
Aye.
Councilman Quabell?
Aye.
Mayor Ross?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Good. And ordinance number 4647.
Next, we have a public hearing on item number 6, which is the amended PRO concept plan for Eagles Ridge Estates, and also item 8, which is Eagles Ridge Community Improvement District. We're going to combine these public hearings into one. So if you have any comments on either one of them, that will be your time to speak. So Nathan, you're going to kick it off?
Yeah, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
The city has the following exhibits to enter into the record.
I'm
for-
getting ahead of myself, aren't I?
For the amended PRO concept plan, we have council information form with the following attachments: Planning Commission staff report with attachments, site location map, site aerial map, proposed plans, affidavit of publication in the Examiner on November 12, 2016, application with attachments, 185-foot notification map, names, addresses of property owners within 185 feet of site, copy of letters sent to said property owners on November 14, 2016, Title IV Land Use Section, Blue Springs Code of Ordinances by reference, 2014 Comprehensive Plan by reference, and Bill number 4477 approving the amended PRO concept plan. Late this afternoon, we also received 3 additional exhibits. They are Exhibits 2, 3, and 4. Letter from Brandon Warren delivered to City Hall on March 20th. Letter from Greg Tucker delivered to City Hall on March 20th. And email from Renee Baylord dated March 20th, 2017. That is all we have to offer for the record for the amended PRO concept plan. For the Eagles Ridge Community Improvement District, we have 1 exhibit to enter into the record. Council information form with the following attachments: cover letter for petition dated February 24, 2017, developers' financial projections and budget submitted February 24, 2017, city clerk verification of petition, March 2, 2017, notice of public hearing sent to property owners on March 3, 2017, and certified return receipts, proof of notice of public hearing published in the Examiner on March 7, 2017, and March 14, 2017, memorandum from Gilmore and Bell dated March 9, 2017, sunshine law notice of city council meeting posted on March 13, 2017, and Bill number 4478 approving and establishing the district with the petition attached as Exhibit A. This is all we have to offer for the record.
Okay.
Thank you,
Half
Mayor.
of the city.
Thank you, Mayor Ross and councilors. Before you today is a request to amend the Eagles Ridge Plan Residential Overlay Concept Plan. Just to be clear, this is the first of 2 separate actions concerning Eagles Ridge subdivision tonight. The 2 items have different boundaries, although they do overlap in some fashion. The applicant, David Ward of Blue Spring Safety Storage, is requesting an approval of amendments for tracks 1 through 4 of Eagles Ridge PRO concept plan. This is located on the east side of 7 Highway, south of Southgate, and north of Future Major Road. The proposal encompasses 21 acres of the original 153-acre subdivision. This design includes 139,000 square feet of retail space, 14,900 square feet of restaurant space, and that is all divided between 6 buildings, which there's 2 strip retail buildings as well as 4 pad sites in this location. The applicant is not proposing any additional land use restrictions other than what is already restricted by its current zoning, which is general business plan residential overlay. The approval appears capable of meeting all foreseeable development requirements except for one. Thus, the applicant is requesting the 20-foot interior side setback requirement to be reduced to 0. Staff does believe that this is a reasonable request because general commercial buildings are typically allowed a 0-foot setback if a party wall is used. But in this case, a party wall is not being used along this location between lots, I believe, 2 and 4 on the south side. That building is at the 0-foot lot line and being proposed to be built on the proposed lot line. Although it is a deviation from the code, it is okay because the building is only an interior side setback and does not have any impact on any neighboring properties. So staff does agree with this proposal. As for public improvements, Public Works will require full road improvements to Southwest Major Road, 5-foot sidewalks, an 8-foot trail, as well as the typical public utility improvements. But do note that along 7 Highway, all improvements, including the intersection improvements to the corner of Major Road and 7 Highway, will be and must be approved by MoDOT. I will mention that the residents of Eagles Ridge have contacted staff with potential concerns of commercial traffic and street access in the residential area. As for the building design, these are the typical, these are the 2 proposed strip buildings. They're designed as typical commercial buildings. The 4 pad site buildings may deviate from these proposals if required by the potential pad site business. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this proposal with 12 staff conditions on March 13th. The vote was 6 in favor and none against. With that, I will stand for any questions.
Are there any questions from the council? Councilman Fowler.
Yes, Your Honor. I guess this is an amendment, and you've mentioned about the commercial here, and you've also mentioned the 0 setback. Could you just be very specific on the amendment?
Yes. There's a property line that runs right here and right here on those 2 locations between commercial tracks. So if it's a general business next to general business zoning, they are allowed to have a 0-foot setback if it is a party wall. In the case of the northern lot, which is this one over here, that is a party wall since there are tenant spaces between. But the southern location down here, there is an access aisle between the 2 buildings, and thus there is no party wall, and they are required to meet that 20-foot setback by code. But with this PRO concept plan, they are allowed to ask for a deviation, and staff does not see that this will negatively impact any surrounding neighbors as the PRO concept provides.
Okay, now you were specific to the amendment, so you're saying the commercial was already there?
Yes, the commercial has always been there. It's always been these 4 tracks, but we never received the design proposal for the layout of the commercial, and thus that's why we're bringing forward it now to ensure that the concept plan for the commercial portion is okay. This
So-
will only impact those 4 lots that are commercial.
Right, so if the issue tonight, the amendment is the setbacks, I think that's what you're saying. I think you say the commercial is already there. There's a lot of concern by the homeowners around there about the traffic volumes and the impacts to traffic, things like that. But you're saying that since, the commercial was already there.
The layout was never there, but the commercial has always been proposed as such, and now may be a time to look at the commercial layout to make sure that it fits as it should within the development.
Okay.
Councilman Corbett.
Some of the emails that I saw, on one of them at least, there was a discussion about no southbound access into the commercial area from Highway 7. Could you explain that to me?
Yes. Southbound 7, heading down this way, there is a median that separates Eagles Ridge from the southbound lane until they can turn into Eagles Ridge Drive, which is currently there, as well as southbound lane you can turn into Major Road. There are 2 northbound access only at mid-block locations, halfway between each current access drive. So those will not be accessible from the southbound lane, and that is MoDOT's call on the spacing of those. They've only
Understood.
allowed Major Road and Eagles Ridge to have full access for north and south.
And you mentioned something about a future road on the north end?
Yes, Southgate Drive, you can see it just barely on this map, is proposed to eventually come across, but at this time we have no proposals being brought forth.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Lavasey.
The other concern I think was expressed was the access points into the residential area. Some mentioned 6 access points. Can you identify those just for reference?
Yes, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 access points. They do, I'll defer to Public Works, but I believe they do meet the minimum spacing requirements for commercial buildings.
I do have another question, Your Honor.
Did that take care of you, Councilman?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Councilman Corbett.
Thank you. Anyone entering from that center, coming in from the south, turning in, or even coming northbound and turning in there, are they actually driving through any of the residential in order to access the commercial development, or are they just on the edge? Looks to me from this drawing like it's all on the edge of...
For the Major Road connection, I believe most people would come through, turn left if they're southbound, turn left on the Major Road, and then turn into the development off of Major Road at their southern connection point. If they're accessing the northern lot, the most typical movement would be to go into the lot or possibly a U-turn, but I don't know if MoDOT would allow a U-turn at that intersection. So,
Thank you.
Councilman Culpepper.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. When I look at the diagrams in the staff report of what appears to be a long, low building, multiple tenant, I'm assuming, where do I see that? Where is that going to be placed on here? Because I have always been under the impression for many years now that we were going to get away from all this strip shopping center stuff, and we were going to try to have some kind of variation and not have these, that we were going to go for more for the module commercial.
and this is a remnant lot from a previous preliminary plat, and it's longer and skinnier, and as such, I'm not sure how easily a different development type than was originally proposed.
So where is this building going to,
Yes.
that we're looking at? Where is that on here?
This is one of the strip centers, and then the second one is up here on the north lot. So there's 2 strip buildings. The southern one has gone through Planning Commission and as a PRO final plan contingent on the concept plan approval by City Council, but that does include a 40,000 square foot grocery store and I believe 14,000 square feet of retail space.
All right. So the back side of this building that faces these residences is going to be this flat facade with doors in it. Is that what you're telling me?
They are required to have a landscape buffer and a 6-foot fence between the backside of the building and the residence, and that the landscaping will be required to be on the residential side. So they won't be looking completely at just the building. They will have some landscaping in front of it.
And to be maintained by?
The property owner of the commercial development.
Commercials. Okay. All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Nathan. Mr. Bichette, you'd like to come up and talk about the CID before we go to the public?
Good evening. My name is David Bushak with the law firm of Gilmore & Bell. We serve as Economic Development Counsel to the city on this matter. I'll provide a short summary of the CID, some of the major components of the CID. This CID is proposed to impose a 1-cent sales tax, and its primary purpose will be to fund public improvements associated with the project. The developers indicated that they will be funding improvements to Major Road in the amount of $650,000, parking improvements, $350,000, and then some financing costs associated with that, construction financing. So the primary public improvements portion of the budget that would be funded by the CID is just over $1 million, $1,025,000. The revenue projections that the developers presented are included in your packet and summarize. Their projections show that the hard costs of the improvements would be paid off after a 15-year period, factoring in the interest that would be paid during the payoff period. The loan structure, I'll summarize the loan structure because this becomes important for one of the provisions that I'll talk about in a moment. The structure is that the developer will privately finance this project, and the annual debt service on the loan associated with the hard improvements that the CID will fund. The CID revenue is not sufficient each year to fully service that debt. So the developer will cover the difference during the payoff period. The payoff period of that loan will be 10 years under their projections. So the loan for those public improvements that I just summarized would be 10 years, but since the developer will be coming out of pocket during that 10-year period for a portion of that debt, the CID would continue and reimburse the developer until the developer is fully reimbursed. So in essence, the CID fully funds those public improvements. So factoring in both of those components, the 10-year payoff period plus the remaining reimbursement to the developer, that's how they arrive at their 15-year payoff projected period. Once the CID is formed, it would be a separate political subdivision. It's an entity that's separate from the city, so it's not something that's run by the city. It would be governed by a 5-member board of directors. The proposal is to have 1 city representative permanently on the board. The composition of the initial 5-member board is included in the petition, including 1 city person. And then successors, when those terms naturally end, they'll be appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council here. A cooperative agreement is being negotiated now. We have delivered a draft of the agreement to implement the CID to the developer, and we have a few preliminary comments from the developer, but we're waiting on their full response. So that cooperative agreement would come back to you at a future date if you approve the CID. Budgeting. The district needs to approve an annual budget as part of the process that applies to all political subdivisions in the state. That budget would be presented to the city between 180 and 90 days before the start of each fiscal year, and that's something that's reviewed by the city and can be reviewed by the city council. Final comment, the termination of this CID was a point of significant discussion amongst the city team, and so the ordinance is drafted for the CID to terminate at the earlier of one of 2 points in time, either after 20 years or 5 years after the developer has been fully reimbursed. So if you recall the financing summary that I provided to you, their projection is that the CID will fully reimburse the developer after 15 years. But if the CID overproduces as compared to their revenue projections, and let's say developers fully reimbursed after 12 years, for example, then the second part of the termination provision would kick in, and they would be allowed to continue the CID for an additional 5 years to fund services. So in that scenario, if the developer's fully reimbursed after 12 years, for example, then the district would last for 17 years total. That concludes my initial comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about the
Are there
CID.
any questions from the council? Councilman Fowler.
Yes, and this may come back to our staff as well. Paying the $1,025,000 and the interest on that debt, I'm good with that. I think that's a trade-off for, the investment that we'll see. You're talking about improvements to or actually making major road with right bypass, sidewalk, utilities. There's a parking lot in there where we have stormwater management, lights, concrete, landscaping, interest, etc. The thing that concerns me is that extra 5 years after the developer's been reimbursed on everything, assuming they paid off all the interest and everything, that extra 5 years, because when I ask about that, I find out that money can go towards cleaning, maintenance, and other services for private property, promoting tourism, recreation, cultural activities or special events, business activity development and retention, refuge collection. So you're talking about the tax dollars actually to pay for their trash pickup for private ownership. So that's what I have concern with. I can no concern with paying off the debt. I think as the public record shows in the letter, that they're talking about bringing in a proposed Sunfresh grocery store, a hardware store, and a restaurant. Those all seem like good amenities to have down there. But that money potentially, that 5-member board controlling that money for 5 years that's being collected as taxes, public money, but going into private property and individual ownership there. That's my concern. So why would we want to do that? Well, I guess 2 comments. I can tell you about the legal and then the policy side. From a legal perspective, that's something that's allowed under the CID Act. So from my perspective, it's allowed. Okay. But the second part, and I think this is your issue, from a policy standpoint, is that something that the city should allow, and that's ultimately what you need to pass judgment on. So I guess I'll ask this to staff. Can I make an amendment on that to go ahead and keep this to the public funds used for public infrastructure only?
You can always make an amendment.
Yeah,
but let me.
Why is it coming to us like this?
That's the question.
Councilman, it's coming to you like this because this is consistent with other CIDs that this council has approved in the past. There's nothing unique or different here with this proposal than what's been allowed or authorized at Adams Dairy Landing or at the mall at Fall Creek, and I'll defer to Christine or Adam to see if that's. I don't believe there's anything unique or different here, and that what's being proposed is what's allowed under the statute. And I think historically, staff has taken the position that, the council can do whatever you want to do and depart from what the state allows, but there's been sort of a philosophical approach that it's treated like a user fee. The CID is only collected in the event that people actually go there and they shop there and they spend their tax dollars there. So if they're not shopping there and the revenue's not collected, then the revenue's not going to be produced and reinvested in the property. But we've seen over time properties that have deteriorated and the parking lots crumble, sidewalks, curbs, infrastructure are not replaced. And so the state statute, I believe, under the CID allows for this use in order that the owner of the property is able to maintain it and hopefully keep it in a pristine condition long term.
So what happens at the end of the extra 5 years? Does it deteriorate then? I agree with Councilman Fowler. I've got a problem here with this additional 5 years.
Anyone else on the council? Because I think what we have to be cautious of, although it's within our ability to do it, I think we've kind of set a precedent by letting everybody else do it. And then all of a sudden, you're
quick
going
comment
to
to
cut it
that.
off, so.
I respect that, and I argued against some of those as well, but I think there is, the state law is really wide open on this. They can definitely use the money if the 5-member board agrees, so it'd be out of the council's hands. They can use it for a lot of uses that benefit, private-owned businesses. And I guess I support that if we limit it to the public infrastructure, and maybe the parking lot, if we pay for a parking lot and it needs improvement at that time. So I guess I may be entering a motion that we kind of limit the scope of this. So,
Mr. Mayor, can I ask, what was the last CID we considered before this one?
Staff?
Just to remind me.
White Oak,
White Oak, okay.
and it was tied with the TIF. This would be the first standalone CID only incentive that you've been asked to approve.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, so back to Councilman Fowler. Do you want to offer an amendment?
well, yeah, after the public hearing, I think I
Okay,
might.
okay.
Yep, Your Honor.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that is so we can make sure we get this totally vetted and all the questions answered from our experts here. Okay, so no more questions of David? Would the developer come forward? And maybe you can answer, get sworn in, and maybe you can answer some questions too.
So I swear the testimony about give this case and the truth, stuff like that.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm Robin Martinez with the Martinez Law Firm representing Ward Development. We have David Ward here, who I believe you know, and we also have Robert Walquist, who's our project engineer. Mr. Walquist and Mr. Ward can go ahead and I think address maybe some of the earlier questions that you had concerning the actual Planning Commission approval and some of the issues relating to the traffic flow. I think that's probably within their wheelhouse. What I'm really going to focus on a little bit more is the CID. CIDs and the CID Act, as has been indicated, is fairly broad in terms of how it can be construed. And, having taken a look and worked on other CIDs, they really have a very, very sort of broad range of activities that they engage in. I think you find CIDs everywhere on the spectrum, from focusing on just purely the public project infrastructure component, such as Councilman Feller has advocated for. And you see other CIDs that fall on the other end of the spectrum that do everything from providing security to trash pickup to even graffiti removal. So it really spans the, and even some, like for instance on the 39th Street over in Kansas City, Missouri, where they actually focus on things like tourism development. This one I think sort of falls a little bit kind of in between those two sort of broad extremes. And although probably more closely to just purely funding the public infrastructure components, because that's what, that's essentially how the petition is drafted. And there is that additional component to allow for additional maintenance of those public infrastructure improvements once the project costs have been reimbursed. And then there's also some flexibility built in to permit some additional things like beautification, additional landscaping and maintenance of that. And some of the landscaping issues I know were raised earlier and were of concern. The other factor that I think is important to keep in mind with this is that we originally looked at a larger scope of the CID to actually include a further expansion of the major road to connect all the way over to Adams Dairy Parkway. We had to dial back on that because of the financing projections. And I think our plan, and as it's laid out in the cooperative agreement that we've been working on, is for a second phase that once this particular proof of concept is demonstrated to actually work and generate enough sales tax revenue, once that has been demonstrated, it would then be possible to go back in and finance additional public infrastructure improvements in a second phase, which we would have to come in front of you again for approval of that, to extend Major Road out to connect to the others, to connect to Adams Dairy Parkway. So, I think Mr. Bushak has already given you, I think, a pretty good picture of the overall project budget and costs and what it would entail. The total project cost of this center is approximately $6.5 million, just over that. Of that total, $1,025,000 is slated for the public infrastructure components, although it's my understanding, based upon discussions that have been had a couple of days ago, MoDOT has wanted some additional sort of work on turn lanes, and that is going to add about probably $50,000 to that overall public portion of the cost. So we've got some flexibility built into these numbers. I'd be happy to take any questions about the CID. Otherwise, maybe Mr. Ward can tell you a little bit about what he has in mind for the actual grocery store, hardware store, and then the restaurant concept. Sure.
Are there any questions from Mr. Martinez before we go to Mr. Ward?
I guess on the CID, you heard my concerns. Yeah, Major Road and the parking lot, like say storm sewer, lights, concrete, it does say landscaping, utility sidewalks, bike path, all those. And if the district is kept open to move Major Road to the east farther, that seems fine to me. Again, my boundary is public infrastructure. Would you have any concerns if I did present a motion that limited to that? I mean, I don't think this is a tourist destination myself, but so.
Well, and I guess I wouldn't have any objections on its face without seeing the language, unless I saw the language of it first. But the way I look at how this is drafted, it is drafted very much so to focus those expenditures solely on construction of the public infrastructure and then the maintenance of that post-construction. So, okay, we can limit it to that, but in my view, it's already limited to that.
Okay, and
so that's a roundabout way of answering your question.
But I'm reading stuff from staff here saying it can be used for many other things. So.
Yeah.
I mean, you can itemize a little bit, parking lot maintenance, landscaping, sprinkler system, things like that.
All the things that the original incentive was about.
Some of the other items could be eliminated, if that's what you're asking.
I'm saying everything that's being incentivized, on this piece of paper now.
I mean, trash
and maintenance
other
of that.
than maintenance of the parking lot could be taken out and itemized at that point, I think.
All right. Well, thank you for the feedback.
Okay.
Okay, I'm David Ward, and what we have proposed is a 40,000 square foot upscale Sunfresh grocery store there. We also have 14,000 foot of retail there, which we're actually now working with 2 restaurants, negotiating on, one taking 5,000 foot, another taking 3,000 foot. And then also the hardware store will be coming in, I believe, taking 2 spaces, about 3,000 foot. So it's looking like we'll have at least 80% of the project leased up before we even break ground on the project there. We did have some concerns on accesses into it. The south property is actually, this is the one that we're concentrating on. The other sections, I couldn't tell you when that will happen. I mean, it could be 2 years, it could be 10 years. We just don't know at this time. But the staff was wanting us to come in with a layout for the future on the other areas. Subject to change. Some of that probably could change down the road depending if we have a bigger box user, more pad sites, things like that come into play. But right now, I know what we're doing there. Truck traffic will only be on the south project. We're coming off Major Road and then coming in just right here on the, I can't see what that is, the East Street there will be the main traffic flows for trucks. Public will come in off 7 Highway and come in through the backside of the subdivision. More than likely, we will cut some road across to intersect with the North and South Street there at the Eagle Ridge. I think, Nathan, did you have those? The plans don't give it any justice, I'll put it that way. So I brought a couple photos of a store that we are duplicating that's up in Minnesota, and very attractive, a lot of glass. We use a lot of natural sunlight in the store, the retail. Actually, on our retail, we're going to have an outside seating area for the restaurant there with outside fireplace there. Also, with the grocery store, we'll have an outside seating area there with see-through fireplace with seating inside and outside there. So it's kind of an upscale grocery store there. I'm trying to If I can ask if you have any questions for me, I'll try to answer them best I can.
Sometimes my eyesight is challenged. Did that say for the restaurant Cheesecake Factory?
If you got that connection, I'll take it.
Yeah, I would say Mr. Ord would be happy.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Very much. And the 7 highway projects, nothing's really been built down there for quite a while.
Yeah.
We own quite a bit of property along 7 highway. We've seen Adams Dairy the city helps it along and funds through that projects. I'd just like to see us get the same benefit of the city's help on the 7 highway projects there. And I think we're bringing a very nice concept to the area there. I know the strip center thing is a thing that but we've kind of made it, in my opinion, a little bit different.
Well, my concern was that we are replicating some of these strip centers that we've already got up and down 7.
This will more than likely look like one big box grocery store, is because the large raised with the glass is actually be in the middle of the center, and then the back will all be stuccoed, so you won't be just looking at a black plain. We'll do some work on the back also to make that.
And I want to make sure the residents are protected.
Right.
Now, as I look at this,
So I say the plans doesn't do any justice.
If you can bring us something that looks like that overnight, by
and that's
golly.
what it will. Yes, that's what it'll look like there.
I just, as I said, my concern was when we do these strip centers. You've been in this community a long, long time. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
And we said we weren't going to do that anymore. And
the site is something we were dealt with, the size of the site there to deal with. And I mean, if we could do pad size all through the rest of it, I'd be gladly do it.
Well, and I'm excited for the development on the south side of town, obviously.
I think we're associated with Associate Grocers. They've done their market studies. The south side, the way it's growing, I think it'll be a great in between going up to the 40 and 7. People won't have to go up into the traffic to do their shopping.
Very good. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Your Honor.
Yes, Councilman Edmonds.
I'd just like to throw this out. If District 3 doesn't find this acceptable, Woods Chapel would love to see something like this over on Woods Chapel. So just keep that in the back of your mind.
Well, I haven't ruled it out. We've been approached
he's wanting to arm wrestle me over
That's
here.
true. We have been approached up there also.
Okay, I guess I need to become an auctioneer. What about District 3?
Mr. Mayor, one thing I'd like to add as well, I know you've had a lot of questions about what it would look like from the backside to the neighborhood. Ward Development actually is involved in the residential development back there as well. And so, on that basis, I can tell you that I know that they are looking at ways to maximize the value of that as well. And of course, the visual sight lines from residential development are actually pretty important to that process.
We have, I think it's 160 some lots that we have for residential to go in, which we're starting with the villas. I think we just actually started this week, dirt work and sewers, then be moving to the residential and major road all at the same time there. So I do have a concern. I want it to look nice because we're trying to sell 168 lots, houses, and things to the customers there. So we are aware that we want to try to keep it looking nice, landscape nice, the fencing all across the back there and all too, and berms. Yeah.
I do have another question. Do you own the property where Southgate would intersect?
I do not. Okay. We stop right at the edge of the commercial there. It looks like Southgate would probably be about another 150 feet north. Okay. But we don't own that. I don't really know who does.
And I guess the reason I ask, at some point in time, I would like to see some kind of traffic pattern that
I would agree
come
with you.
in and go down to Cardell Mason Elementary School.
Right. I would hope that when that road does come in, we'll be able to have 2 access points into the new street there coming in, so we can alleviate any traffic. And again, I'm hoping the road will be in there before this ever will come to fruition there.
Councilman Goldberg?
I was just going to say, I'm not sure, but I think Bob Frost owns a whole bunch of property in through there.
I think he's south of there. I think Bob's
is
probably
he south of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Chrisman's family was the last ones I knew that owned that through there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
One more question, if I might, just real quick. And I'm assuming this, but I wanted to ask the question and see. The figures we got on the CID are based on just this section alone, not the whole project. We're just looking at this one section.
Correct.
So
And the income off that.
estimated taxable sales and all that,
Yes.
granted, it's estimated, but I was just looking at the figures and just want to make sure that was just for this section.
Right. If things came, sooner than I thought, and we have the other pad sites, we could expand our CID into those areas to pay off the money I put into it ahead of time.
Okay.
Yeah. And, I'm doing this out of pocket. I haven't come to ask for any TIF or anything like that for the city to sell bonds or anything. So it's, we're kind of sticking our neck out a little bit too, but I think it's a project worthy.
Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Now we'll go to the public. I do have 3 speaker appearance forms. Is this C-O-R-I-N-N-E, Aaron's? All right, you want to come up and be sworn in?
Raise your hand. You solemnly swear to the testimony you're about to give in this case.
I do.
Give your name and address.
Corinne Ahrens, 413 Eagles Ridge Drive.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I just want to, first of all, thank you for always addressing the family portion of this. And really, I think with my neighbors that wrote in earlier today, I think what we're wanting is perhaps a compromise of eliminating the 2 entry points off of Webster and Newport. What we have right now is we've got a speedway down Eagles Ridge Drive, and as you all know, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and so many of the duplex owners currently speed down our driveway and then turn, and so we just want to make it as inaccessible as possible for the public, just for the safety of our children that are, I would say 3/4 of the kids in our neighborhood are elementary age and riding bikes and doing outdoor activities. And so if we could eliminate that and perhaps compromise in that effort, we would greatly appreciate that.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah, could we see that on the map up there so I'll be clear on what she's asked for?
And excuse me if I'm not sure either, but is it this intersection and that intersection that you're looking at?
I believe so. I think there were 6. Remember when someone asked the 6 entry points out of the residential versus the highway? And I think if we could just eliminate 1 or 2 of those, and maybe you all would have a better idea. It just seems like there's so many ways for them to get to where they're going. And yes, they would be on the outskirts of our neighborhood, but we have 2 big rectangles that our kids are playing around constantly. So even if they came down Eagles Ridge and turned, I mean, I was just wondering if there was a way to compromise and eliminate some of that traffic.
What are the names of the streets again?
Newport Drive and Webster Drive.
She's talking about that area there.
Can staff try to, are those labeled? Earlier you did some markings in red on all the different entry points.
These 2 right here are Webster and Newport Drives.
And so maybe it's...
There's an access point here and an access point here as well.
And if I'm going southbound on 7, and if I turn into Eagles Ridge, if I know that there's a little outskirt to go in the back way, I mean, then I wouldn't have to go all the way down to Ward. Many people are going to, I think that we're making some decisions off of assumptions of what we think people will do, and I just want to make sure that we're, I don't know, I just think there's a cautionary tale, and if there is something that we could do to...
So your
Maybe
concern
that's a
is
bad
not so much the public coming into your subdivision, because they're going to be going there to shop, is the people that live in your subdivision?
No, I think that I'm just proving a point that the people that are currently living in our subdivision are coming down that way, and I think that the public will also be using those routes. I mean, we've got, I don't know what part they're working on, but we've got a lot of the service trucks that are coming down Eagles Ridge Drive. So if we could have, and maybe that's MoDOT, I don't know, this is all new to me, but maybe if we could have more access points off the highway, or just not so many that they would have to detour by our families in order to get to these shopping marts. So am I saying things incorrect, or is there anything in addition to my neighbors that would say that are in
Mr.
support
Wright,
of this?
What are the name of the 2 streets on the east side where the other 4 access points exist?
There's
Fifth
Newport.
Street.
Carson is down on the southern side.
Right. But that east side is 5th Street, and then what's the other one?
Oh, yeah. 5th, and then I believe this is 6th Street.
Okay, what about north of that, off of Newport? It doesn't exist yet. What will that street be?
5th Street will be continued up here.
Okay. Well, to me, and maybe this is, it makes more sense to reduce the entrances off of 5th, because the two that you just identified on that previous map, those are the shortest distances for people coming off of 7 to get into it without getting into the neighborhood. If you remove those two entrances, anybody that turns into Eagles Ridge Drive has to drive all the way down to 5th Street in order to get into the commercial area. Would that be right, Mr. Wright?
Would
that be correct, Mr. Wright?
They turn in.
They turn in there, and you'd
southbound
have to go in
For
there.
northbound traffic on 7, I'd say there is some other access.
Yeah, northbound's not even gonna enter the neighborhood at all, but southbound traffic is gonna do that, what he just drew, if you would remove the two entrances you're discussing on Newport.
Yeah, and I'm going to default to your expertise on this. It just looks like a lot from a mom's perspective, and I have really
Mr. Wright, let me ask this question. You said
no experience with this.
The access points are the minimum according to the code. What would the maximum be then? Would you be able to reduce, if you went to the maximum entry points, what would that reduce, or would it?
They are allowed to have a certain number of access points based on how much lot frontage they have. Public Works will be able to better answer this, but the spacing between
minimum spacing.
I don't think we have a maximum allowed. I'll refer to Public Works though.
Councilman, generally when we look at the spacing for the entrances, that we go with the same spacing that we use for residential streets, which is 200 feet.
So there's no restriction removing some of these entry points from code's perspective?
From Public Works, no.
Okay.
Mr. Martinez, did you have something to add?
Yes, our project engineer, Robert Walquist, I think, can answer. Yes, I'm afraid.
Okay, if he comes in, you come in to be sworn in.
Sounds right, that's very much the case.
I do. I just wanted to discuss the way we laid it out. We put those two entrances on the corner there so that say a semi or probably most likely a smaller truck would get off the residential road as fast as possible, because we're stuck with the way it was designed previously. There's nothing we can do about that. We can't put an entrance on that main road, Eagles Ridge Drive, because it's too short. You can't get people to get off that. So they have to get to that residential road, which is 6th Street right there. And then I put those on the corner so that say the truck or even the patrons to those establishments would get off as fast as possible. Now the ones along the back side are more for access for fire department or the residences coming in there, and it just makes it, I don't think anybody will use those except the residences, because everybody's going to be trying to get to 7 Highway as fast as possible. That was my concern as far as eliminating those along the backside. That wouldn't be a big deal, but those corner ones, I think, for their benefit, I think need to stay, just as an engineer. So
I'm confused. I thought I heard someone say that the delivery trucks would come down Major Road and turn into the back side. Yeah. And why would a delivery truck be coming down the dead center of this and making that jig-jaggy right, left to get in behind these? That was my understanding. And I know my jig-jagging doesn't make a lot of sense from where you're standing. I'm looking at a diagram. But if they come the way is shown here in red, why would they be coming in on that center street anyway?
we're looking at the whole development. which is the commercial on the north side of Eagle Ridge Drive. So a driver, there you go, perfect. That's the pattern that driver's going to take to get to that north commercial, because that's...
Which isn't up for discussion at the moment, correct? I mean, we're actually talking about the south portion.
We are talking about both portions.
We're talking about a concept for the entire development.
Right.
And then a final plan for the Sunfresh.
Okay.
We're stuck with kind of what we were already dealt. So trying to get them off as fast as possible is the only thing I can do at this point.
So what I hear you saying then, as coming into that center, is that Eagles Ridge Drive?
Yes, that main one. Yes.
If they come in through Eagles Ridge Drive, that is the only way to get to those on the north portion of this?
Yes, until Southgate opens up, and then they will do the same pattern right there. They will be able to get to that commercial.
Which is what we would prefer.
Correct.
Than coming down in the center.
Yes.
So how do we accomplish getting that done?
Well, you will require Southgate,
I mean, how can
and they
you
do have
require
plans.
that once you have the street there and you have the openings? I don't see, and I'm sorry, I don't see where deleting those two entrances on the corner, it appears to me that is for that would be of benefit to the residents. I don't see that you're going to find anybody other than residents using that entrance to the residential portion.
Correct.
I hope I'm making sense.
You're doing fine.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, that answer your question?
Yes.
Clear as mud? Okay.
Your Honor?
Yes, Councilman Covell.
For the benefit of the lady, I think your goal is right, but I think the design actually accomplishes your goal already. That's the way I see it. If you look at how short those lines are, if you actually took those out, you'd be forcing public traffic into the residential areas. This actually keeps them out, I think. So I think you have the right goal, but I think that the design actually accomplishes your goal.
All right,
That's how I
any
see it.
questions of the engineer? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Did we finish you?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. We got Bob Cheney, is it?
Correct.
All right.
Yes. My name is Bob Cheney. I live at 1008 Southeast Scarlet Court here in Blue Springs. So two things that I would like to draw your attention to, and you've talked about one of them extensively, and that's the transportation access. And so I think you really are approving both the north and south side of this as the overlay concept. And so I think, as you've discussed, on the north side for sure, the access for transportation seems quite questionable. As somebody that drives by there all the time, thinking about more trucks turning left across 7th Highway, the speed limit there is 45 miles an hour, and few people actually go the speed limit there, let's be honest. That seems rather questionable. The second thing I'd like to draw your attention to is the fact that this is yet another strip retail center, and despite the developer saying that it's upscale, and maybe it is, we have a lot of that here in Blue Springs. If you drive up and down from the north end to the south end, I think you can see that there's quite a bit of it that has remained vacant, even since it was originally constructed. So I think there's a real possibility this one could end up that way as well. It sounds great to have a Sunfresh market there on the south side of town, but Price Chopper's going in less than 2 miles away, and Hy-Vee's already there. So I think that the opportunity could be there, that this could end up being vacant at some point in the very near future. So I'd like for you guys to consider that as you're thinking about whether or not to approve this planned residential overlay concept at this time.
Okay. Any questions from council? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Robert. Last name starts with a W.
That would be me.
Oh, that was you.
And then Walt was WA.
All right. Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience like to speak in opposition? Don't have any more cards. I'm going to go back to our Assistant City Administrator, Ms. Cates. You want to explain a little bit more about the CID and what it can and can't do?
Yes, Exhibit C in the petition has a list of public improvements and eligible services, and we understand that the petition and what they list is not binding, but it does only list the types of services, Councilman Fowler, that you are referencing as to what you would think would be considered eligible for maintenance of the property. And if I'm not mistaken, we could incorporate that into the cooperative agreement to make sure it's limited to just those types of services.
Let's see the language you're referring to.
It's page 278, if you can. In there. Right. Starting with this section here under B, public improvements and eligible services. So it lists safety and security, maintenance of publicly and privately owned areas, landscape and streetscape maintenance, management operations, and marketing. So that could be narrowed even further, but that's the way it was submitted in the 5-year plan, which is narrower than the list of what a district could consider as services in a CID.
All right, and the maintenance of privately owned properties, what would that include?
I think that is the area that would include parts of the parking lot. I'm not sure if there'd be anything additional to that.
Okay, and you said that can be written into the agreement then?
Is that correct, David? That we could be more specific in the agreements with this?
Yes, I think we can do that. So let me make these two comments to make sure we're all on the same page regarding how we get where you want to be. Ideally, and this would require more procedure, the petition would be amended to narrow everything down to exactly what you want. So generally, the statute provides this much authority to every CID that's formed, and then the petition serves sort of as the constitution, if you will, of that CID, narrows the authority. What I understand is you want to make sure it's really tight regarding services. So ideally, the petition, the body of the petition, not just the 5-year plan, would be changed to narrow it down, but a second method would be what you're discussing, which is tighten it down in the cooperative agreement.
Yeah, and I'll say also that relative to using that additional funds for public infrastructure, like that Southgate entrance, if it could do that, I'd be all for that. You know, if I knew that's where the money was going to. I just want to make sure it's for public usage or to maintain the investments that we have here already agreed to.
Yeah, I think if we take the language that you're going to propose, however you propose that, we will take that and plug it into the cooperative agreement to make sure it implements what you want.
Okay, so staff, I guess maybe you're kind of telling me that it may already be there, or we can handle that administratively.
Yeah, so David, would be the process for bringing forward the cooperative agreement? What's the time frame for that?
Well, I've spoken with the developer's attorney Friday, and potentially the next council meeting, but given that we need to work through these issues, maybe I'd say 2 council meetings from now.
Okay. So I think it's confident to say the developer has heard where you want to be on this, staff has heard where you want to be, so we will try to tighten the language in the cooperative agreement.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak in opposition to? Going once.
I just want a clarification. So this actually will only move it back 1 additional council meeting?
Potentially.
And I'm 1 to 2 council meetings?
Procedurally, what we had intended is, before the issues that you discussed tonight, this was being presented so you could approve the petition tonight.
Right.
And then we were planning on bringing a cooperative agreement back at a later date to implement the petition. So it's really your choice. You could go ahead and approve the ordinance, which approves the petition tonight, and then we will, as we had planned, we'll be bringing back the cooperative agreement at a later date. Or if it's your desire to hold the petition until you see the cooperative agreement, you could also do that.
I think let's go ahead and pass it and then let them bring that back.
Yeah, I don't want to hold things up for those. I think we ought to do what we can tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else? Once, twice? We close this public hearings on items 6 and 8. Is there anyone like to introduce item 7, which is bill number 4477?
I'll introduce it, Your Honor.
Okay.
First reading of bill number 4477, Ordinance approving an amendment to the Eagles Ridge Estates PRO Commercial Tracts 1 through 4 Planned Residential Concept Plan.
Move the bill be approved on its first reading and proceed with the second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in
Yes.
favor, aye? Oh,
Aye.
somebody?
Yeah, Your Honor.
Councilman Fowler.
Yeah, I appreciate the discussion by staff on the CID. I think you understand the intent, and please proceed forward with that. Relative to the project, I think that, this is an amendment, and I think that the commercial has always been destined there. It's good to see investment in the community. I respect the neighbors' concerns for traffic safety. We always want to ensure that, but, it looks like a reasonable proposal and a fair incentive to get this amount of commercial and sales tax revenue. So,
Anyone else? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Same sign.
Second reading of Bill Number 4477, an ordinance approving an amendment to the Eagles Ridge Estates PRO Commercial Tracts 1 through 4 Planned Residential Overlay Concept Plan.
Move the bill be approved on its second reading and sign the appropriate ordinance number.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Councilman Fowler?
Aye.
Councilman Carter?
Aye.
Councilman Edmondson?
Aye.
Councilman Culpepper?
Aye.
Councilman Quabell?
Aye.
Councilman Levesey?
Aye.
Mayor Ross?
Aye.
Carried unanimously, good an ordinance number 4648.
Next introduction, reading of bill number 4478.
I'll introduce it, Your Honor.
First reading of Bill, oops, too far, excuse me. Bill number 4478, an ordinance approving the petition to establish the Eagles Ridge Community Improvement District, establishing the district, and making findings and authorizing actions related to the establishment of the district.
move the bill be approved on its first reading and proceed with the second.
Second. Discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Both same sign.
Second reading of Bill number 4478, an ordinance approving the petition to establish the Eagles Ridge Community Improvement District, establishing the district, and making findings and authorizing actions related to the establishment of the district.
Move the bill be approved on its second reading and sign the appropriate ordinance number.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Councilman Carter?
Aye.
Councilman Edmondson?
Aye.
Councilman Culpepper?
Aye.
Councilman Quabell?
Aye.
Councilman Levesey?
Aye.
Councilman Fowler?
Aye.
Mayor Ross?
Aye.
Carried unanimously, given ordinance number 4649.
Next, the public hearing on the Ridgewood Place at Chapman Farm was continued from the March 6th, now is to be continued to April 3rd.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Same sign, motion carries. Now, the public hearing on the rezoning of Adams Dairy Senior Community Plan Development continued from the February 21st, 2017 meeting to be continued to the May 1st.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries. Now we have the introduction and reading of Bill 4479.
I introduce it.
All right.
First reading of Bill number 4479, an ordinance authorizing the mayor or city administrator of the city of Blue Springs to enter into an agreement with the law firm of Stinson, Leonard, and Street LLP.
Yeah, move the bill be approved on its first reading and proceed with the second.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Both same sign.
Second reading of Bill number 4479, an ordinance authorizing the mayor or city administrator of the city of Blue Springs to enter into an agreement with the law firm of Stinson, Leonard, Street LLP.
Move the bill be approved on its second reading and assign the appropriate ordinance number.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Councilman Edmondson?
Aye.
Councilman Culpepper?
Aye.
Councilman Quabell?
Aye.
Councilman Levesey?
Aye.
Councilman Fowler?
Aye.
Councilman Carter?
Aye.
Mayor Ross?
Aye.
Carried unanimously, given ordinance number 4650.
Next introduction and reading of Bill 4480.
I'll introduce it, Your Honor.
First reading of Bill number 4480, an ordinance amending Chapter 705 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Blue Springs, Missouri, to clarify due dates, penalty dates, disconnect fees, and deposit requirements related to water and sewer bills.
Move the bill be approved on its first reading and proceed with the second.
Second.
All in favor, any discussion? All in
Yep.
favor, aye?
Aye.
Oh, no, hold up.
I just was going to acknowledge staff for this one. There was some residents that had concerns, and I appreciate staff for addressing all their concerns. So,
That will be thank you to Beth, Sharon.
thank you, thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Same sign.
Second reading of Bill number 4480, an ordinance amending Chapter 705 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Blue Springs, Missouri, to clarify due dates, penalty dates, disconnect fees, and deposit requirements related to water and sewer bills.
Move the bill be approved in its second reading and assign the appropriate ordinance number.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Councilman Culpepper?
Aye.
Councilman Quabell?
Aye.
Councilman Levesey?
Aye.
Councilman Fowler?
Aye.
Councilman Carter?
Aye.
Councilman Edmondson?
Aye.
Mayor Ross?
Aye.
Carried unanimously, given ordinance number 4651.
That brings the mayoral announcements. We're going straight to Thoughts to Punda. This concludes the month. The last meeting we'll have in March, which is Women's Month, Recognition Month. And I will end with a quote from a lady. And I quote, "Just don't give up trying to do what you really want to do. Where there is love and inspiration, I don't think you can go wrong." End of quote, and that's from Ella Fitzgerald. We'll go down to visitors. I have 2 visitors' appearance forms that wants to talk about chickens. And I might comment before you even come forward. This is an issue that has come up in the past. We referred it to our Public Safety Citizens Advisory Board on a couple of occasions. They have vetted that, and they have come back with a recommendation that we do not, we need to continue not allowing chickens. So I want to make sure we get that out there. Okay, we have Jason and Ashley Edgar.
Thank you all for your time tonight. We, as a country guy, baling hay and feeding cattle and that kind of thing, I'd like to have every opportunity I can for my child and broaden her background in livestock and farming and that kind of thing. Though the benefits of better education for my daughter to move to a big city where there's more funding, better school district, outweighed that opportunity. So in that, we wanted to propose that we look at our neighbors, Independence, Lee Summit, that allow chickens, and there are pretty strict guidance for that allowance too. There is distance from dwelling that must be upkept, no smelling. It's kind of hard to be sanitary with the chicken, but also sanitary guidelines, that kind of thing. So we were proposing, like our Lee Summit neighbors, if we can have a minimum of, or not a minimum, a maximum of 2 or 4 chickens that would be subject to a certain distance from a dwelling. And that's from a parent perspective. I'd like to have my daughter also talked. Come on. Yes, we must.
Go ahead and talk to us. We don't bite. Go ahead. Would you like some chickens? Have you ever been around chickens?
Yeah, my uncle, he had chickens, and I got to play with them in Potosi, Missouri, and my niece and my nephew, they got chickens for Easter, and I helped out with them.
Okay. Yeah, I grew up in Arkansas. I grew up with chickens. They're real cute when they're little chicks, but then when they get bigger, they become a little bit more challenging.
Tell them your benefit. Tell them the benefit of having your chickens.
Well, when the chickens, we can use the chickens' waste for our plants, and it helps us make compost.
Okay. All right. You did good. That's it. Anybody want to? Councilman Levacy.
I have a quick question, Jason. You don't have to give your address or anything, but can I just ask what part of the city do you live in?
The south of 40.
South side. Okay.
Now, do you have a homeowners association where you live?
No. We do.
I would imagine that would probably also be a concern of a homeowners association.
Yes, it would. If we were in a homeowners association, I would have brought that up to the meeting before bringing it to your attention.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I believe there's.
And your daughter's name? I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
Ashley.
Yeah.
Ashley. Ashley, you did a very good job.
Thank
you for coming up here and talking.
Thank you.
I believe there's one other family that
I
wanted
have
to come up and.
Molly, and I can't make out the last name. Moran?
Correct. Thank you.
All right.
So this is my daughter Molly. She'd like to speak in front of you. She has some great points, and about 8 months ago, she asked us if we could get a chicken. She has done research. She's checked out books from her school, internet. She's definitely taken the bull by the horns with this one, and she'd like to present what she's written for you.
Okay, come on up to the microphone, put that down so she can be heard, and tell us a little bit about it, Molly.
Hi, my name is Molly and I'm 9 years old. I live in Blue Springs, Missouri. I think my family should have chickens because the hen provides organic and non-GMO eggs, which gives us better nutrition. Also, I haven't had the responsibility to take care of chickens. Chickens also eat grubs, which helps us get rid of moles. They also get rid of weeds in our yard. We have 1 acre fenced yard, so there's no chance of them getting out. When a chicken lays an egg, maybe once a day, the loudest they can get is 70 decibels. Compared to a dog, it's 90 to 100 decibels. When they bark, I know the responsibilities of a chicken is clean cage, feed every day, clean water, and many more responsibilities. I know it takes up my time, but I'm very capable of it. My family wants to see the life cycle as a chick to a chicken. Chickens are known as great family pets and companions. Thank you for listening and considering chickens to be our pets. Any questions?
Hey, you did very well. How about that? Where do you go to school? Which school do you go to?
Northview.
Which one?
Northview.
So we're part of a split family. So she goes to Northview, which is in Liberty.
Oh, okay.
Your Honor, I have a question as a non-farm person. Okay. So if you have chickens, do you have to have a rooster too?
No.
So chickens can lay eggs without a rooster?
Yes.
Okay.
And if there is a rooster involved, and the roosters are the loud ones. So. There you go.
Anyone else?
You get up before the rooster.
Okay, well, thank you for coming and expressing that.
Thank you very much.
And, and again, if we refer this back to the Public Safety Citizens Advisory Board, and they have a hearing on it, we certainly would invite you to come back and come and make your presentation to them.
Okay.
That'd be great.
All right.
Thank you.
Those are the last of the speaker appearance forms that I have. Unless there's someone else in the audience that'd like to address the council, I would accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in
Second.
favor, aye.
Aye.
Same sign. We adjourn.